Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. The October winds blow through the withered apple grove, carrying the scent of rotting leaves and the harbingers of impending winter. Michael Hartwell stood at the kitchen window, the coffee in his hand long cold, like his heart, which had slowly frozen over the past 5 years. The night was draped over the backyard like black satin, and the barren garden looked especially bleak in the darkness. Everything had been dying a slow death since Emma had stopped tending the land. Just like their marriage, just like all his hopes for life. Michael's reflection stared back at him in the glass, a middle-aged man of 46, graying at the temples, the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes telling of countless sleepless nights. It was the same face that had looked at him the morning after Sophia's disappearance 5 years ago. Back then the world made sense, and he still believed his wife's tears were real. Memories, like sharp blades, always sliced through his heart in the quietest of moments. Something moved near the old apple tree. Michael set down his mug, his heart suddenly racing. 20 years in military intelligence had instantly activated his alert system: assess, recognize, react. But this wasn't a feeling of threat. This was something broken, vulnerable. The figure was human. Female. Young. She was huddled under a branch, like a wounded animal seeking shelter. Michael grabbed his jacket from the side of the door, and something deep inside trembled, not fear, but a hope he dared not name. The sensor lights came on instantly, a blinding white light washing over the yard, making the shadows seem deeper and more threatening. The figure didn't run, as if she'd lost the strength and will to escape. "Hey," Michael called, his voice gentle but firm. "Are you okay?" The figure slowly turned toward him. In the light, Michael saw a young face about 20 years old, with disheveled brown hair falling past his shoulders and tattered, dirty clothes. But those eyes, the shape of that nose, the line of the jaw. Tom stopped at that moment. Memories came flooding back. The laughter of a 15-year-old girl, her habitual stance of keeping her left shoulder a little higher than her right, her voice when she called him Daddy. Daddy. The word hit him like a bullet. Sophia. She stood there, no longer the child he remembered, but a grown woman carrying the weight of 5 years of hell. There was something in her eyes that Michael had never seen before, a hollowness and resilience only possessed by those who had experienced the deepest pain. "I'm going home," she whispered, her voice hoarse as if it had been torn apart. Then she collapsed. Michael caught her before she hit the ground. She was light as a feather, as if life had drained all substance from her. She reeked of desperation, mixed with too many nights spent sleeping rough. The moment he carried her into the house, Michael felt something awaken inside him. For 5 years he had lived in numbness, going through each day like the walking dead. Now, anger began to burn, hotter than any emotion he had ever felt. The living room suddenly felt different. With her there, the space regained life, like a dead heart starting to beat again. Michael laid Sophia on the couch and wrapped her in the old quilt his mother had made. The blue and white squares held childhood memories, symbols of safety and love. Her fingers automatically found the familiar stitch pattern, like muscle memory. He knelt beside her, afraid that any sudden movement might make this miracle disappear. She was real, she was breathing, but 5 years of despair kept him from fully believing it. "Where have you been?" The question squeezed out of his throat, his voice so hoarse it was barely audible. Sophia's eyes darted to the stairs. Emma's voice drifted down from above as she was having one of her endless phone conversations, talking about inconsequential things, as she always did, wrapping herself in false socialization. "She can't know I'm here," Sophia said, a deep fear in her voice. "Not yet." "Who can't know?" "Emma." Sophia nods as new tears begin to flow. They left silver trails down her cheeks, washing away some of the dirt and revealing the pale skin underneath. "Daddy, I need to tell you something. About what happened to me. About why I disappeared. About her." The last 2 words came out of her mouth like poison. Michael's chest began to tighten, as if an invisible hand was squeezing his heart. For 5 years he'd lived in uncertainty, oscillating between hope and despair. Now the truth was at hand, but he was almost afraid to hear it. "Tell me," he said, a steel determination in his voice. Sophia took a deep breath, like someone about to jump off a cliff. Her hands trembled under the covers, and Michael saw the scars on her wrists, thin white lines that told stories of bondage and struggle. It wasn't an accident. No stranger took me. I wasn't kidnapped. She paused, as if gathering the courage to say the next words. Mom sold me. The words hung in the air, diffusing like poisonous gas. Michael felt the world tilt beneath him, as if gravity had suddenly failed. The living room, the refuge of his grief and longing for 5 years, suddenly became strange and threatening. That's impossible, he said, but even as he uttered the words, he knew they were a lie. Some deeply buried part of his subconscious had always known something was wrong. I heard her on the phone, Sophia continued, her voice getting stronger, like every word was a weapon she was wresting from the darkness. Before that night, she was talking to someone about getting rid of the problem. She said I was becoming too difficult, asking too many questions, threatening to tell people about her secret life. Michael's mind began to work frantically, recalling details that he'd ignored. Emma's late-night phone calls, her unexplained source of money, her unusually calm reaction to Sophia's disappearance. The dark side of human nature was always hidden in the most inconspicuous corners, like a lurking feline ready to pounce on unsuspecting prey. And Emma, the woman he'd been married to for 18 years, had been the perfect predator. She said she found a solution. Sophia's voice became more bitter. The next morning, she made me breakfast. Pancakes with syrup, my favorite as a kid. I thought she wanted to fix our relationship. She laughed bitterly, an expression that belonged perfectly to an adult who had seen the darkest side of the world. I should have known. She hasn't made me breakfast in 3 years. But I wanted to believe she still loved me. And then what happened? Michael asked, though deep down he already dreaded the answer. I woke up in my car, drugged up. There was a man driving, someone I'd never seen before. He had my suitcase, like she'd packed it for me. He said I was going to a new place, a place where I would be useful. Michael's hands automatically balled into fists. 20 years of military training ran through his veins, but now that training felt so distant, so useless. He wanted to kill that man. He wanted to destroy everyone who had hurt his daughter. But most of all, he wanted to destroy Emma. For the next 2 hours, Sophia spoke intermittently about what had happened to her. She'd been sold into a complex human trafficking network, moved from place to place, and experienced horrors that Michael couldn't fully comprehend. Her voice trembled at times and grew cold, as if she had learned to block out the pain deep inside. Every detail cut at Michael's heart like a knife, but he forced himself to listen to every word. The truth was often more frightening than the lies. I escaped 6 months ago, Sophia eventually says. A woman named Lorna helped me. She runs safe houses for girls like me. It took me so long to find the courage to go home. Girls like you. Girls who have been trafficked. Girls who were sold by people they trusted. Michael stared at his daughter, the stranger who wore Sophia's face but carried unimaginable pain. There was a wisdom in her eyes that only an old man could have, a resilience only possessed by those who had survived hell. Everyone has a secret inside that no one knows about, a shadow that runs deep. But Emma's secret was darker than any nightmare he could imagine. She sold you, he repeated, letting the words roll over his tongue, savoring their bitterness. For money. A lot of money. I heard her talking on the phone later, when she thought I was unconscious. She was excited, Dad. Excited about what she could do with that money. She talked about traveling, about things she wanted to buy. Footsteps came up the stairs and Emma's voice became clearer. Michael could hear her talking about some charity event, with that performative enthusiasm in her voice, like her whole life was a well-choreographed drama. Hide, Michael said, a new kind of coldness in his voice that surprised even him. Basement. Now. Sophia disappeared like a shadow, taking the covers with her. Michael quickly cleared the scene of traces, just as he'd learned to do in the military. Leave no evidence, no clues. The moment Emma entered the living room, Michael felt something radically change within him. She looked perfect as usual, silk pajamas, perfect hair, expensive perfume. But now he saw what lay beneath the mask. The monster. Who are you talking to? She asked, with that calculating look in her blue eyes that he now realized had been there all along. Myself, Michael replied, trying to keep his voice normal. Thinking out loud. Emma studied his face like a hunter assessing his prey. She had always been beautiful, but now he saw the predatory nature beneath the beauty. She was a perfect predator, so perfectly disguised that it had taken him 18 years to see through it. You look pale, she said, taking a step closer. Is everything all right? Fine, he said. Just tired. Her perfume smelled sickening now, too sweet and artificial. Like everything else about her, beautiful with rot hidden beneath the surface. You work too much, she said, giving him that practiced smile, the same one she'd given him the morning after Sophia's disappearance. Now he understood what that smile really meant. She kissed him on the cheek, a mechanical gesture. Her lips were cold, like a snake's kiss. When she went upstairs, Michael went to the basement. It was his sanctuary, surrounded by tools and unfinished projects. But now it would become something else, a place to conspire, a war room to plan his revenge. Sophia sits in the corner, wrapped in an old quilt, looking so young, so broken. But in her eyes, Michael saw steel determination. We need to be smart about this, he said, a new firmness in his voice. If we're going to destroy her, we need evidence. We need a perfect plan. Destroy her. Michael's eyes turned cold, like an Arctic storm. She sold my daughter. She destroyed our family. She made me believe you were dead when she knew you were suffering through hell. He paused for a moment, letting the anger flow through his veins. She's going to pay for this. She'll lose everything: her freedom, her reputation, her money, her dignity. I'll make sure she rots in prison, remembering every day everything she's lost. Sophia looked at her father and saw for the first time a man she had never seen before. This was not the gentle furniture maker, not the patient father. This was a soldier, a fighter, a man seeking complete vengeance after being completely betrayed. Tell me exactly what happened, Michael continued. Every detail. We need to establish the timeline, find the connection, track the money. Over the next few hours, Sophia describes in detail what she experienced that night and the aftermath. Michael took notes, just as he did when he was in the military doing intelligence gathering. Every detail is important. Every connection could be evidence. As Sophia describes the different places she's been resold, the things she's been forced to do, and the abuse she's endured, Michael feels something beyond anger burning inside him. It was a pure, primal desire for revenge. He would make Emma pay for every minute of pain. The next morning, Michael began his investigation. He contacted his old friends and the military people who had the skills to track money, get information, and conduct surveillance. His first call was to Zeke Morrow. Zeke had been his surveillance technologist in Afghanistan and now ran an ostensible auto repair store in Portland that was actually a high-tech intelligence gathering operation. Michael Hartwell, Zeke said over the phone. I thought you were dead. Not dead, but I need your help. What kind of help? I need to trace some financial transactions. 5 years old. I need phone records, bank records, anything you can find. That sounds interesting. It's also illegal. It concerns my daughter. There was a moment of silence. Then Zeke said, I'll see what I can find. Give me a name. Emma Hartwell. My wife. Silence again, longer silence. Are you sure you want to know what you'll find? Yes. Michael said, steel determination in his voice. I want to know everything. Over the next few days, Michael began to build a detailed profile of Emma's behavior. He studied her schedule, her habits, her social circle. He began to notice patterns he'd previously overlooked. Emma had a lot of unexplained income. She claimed to come from antique sales, but Michael had never seen her buy or sell any antiques. She had expensive jewelry, designer handbags, luxury items, all of which were way out of their budget. She often received late-night phone calls and always walked to the other room to answer them. When Michael asked, she said it was a friend who had a problem and needed to talk. Now these details were beginning to form a pattern that Michael had previously trusted and loved her too much to see. Emma had been living a double life. A week later, Zeke called him. You need to come here, he said. You need to see this for yourself. Michael drove to Portland with mixed emotions of fear and anticipation. Whatever Zeke had found, he knew it would change everything. Zeke's workroom looked like a scene from a science fiction movie: multiple computer screens, complex electronics, devices that tracked information from around the world. Sit down, Zeke says, his expression more serious than usual. You're not going to like what you're going to see. The first screen showed bank records. Emma's personal account, transactions made 5 years ago in October. October 15th, Zeke said, pointing to the screen. A week after Sophia disappeared. Wire transfer from Emma's account to Pendleton Imports LLC, $150,000. Michael stared at the numbers. It was a lot more money than Emma claimed to have. Where does she get that kind of money? That's the wonderful part. Zeke clicked to another screen. She didn't. The transfer was initially denied, with insufficient funds. Then, 3 days later, she managed to make the same transfer. Someone paid her, $150,000 to be exact, deposited into her account, then immediately transferred out to Pendleton Imports. Zeke pulled up more files. I traced Pendleton Imports. Delaware registered shell company. Single owner, Julian Rusk. Michael felt the pieces of the puzzle begin to come together. Who is he? Real estate developer, ostensibly. But he has other businesses. He sits on the board of Pacific Logistics Solutions. Never heard of it. You should have heard of it. They're currently under federal investigation for human trafficking. The FBI raided 3 of their facilities last year. The news article appeared on the screen, details of the FBI investigation. Michael read it and felt a cold understanding spread to his stomach. Emma had sold Sophia to Julian Rusk. Rusk had arranged the abduction through Pacific Logistics. It was a sophisticated, organized operation specializing in the buying and selling of human beings. There's more, Zeke said, pulling up phone records. Calls between Emma and a number associated with Rusk. A dozen calls in the weeks before and after Sophia's disappearance. Michael studied the data, each new revelation cutting into his heart like a knife. Emma didn't just sell Sophia, she maintained ongoing relationships with these people. I need more, Michael said, a dangerous calm in his voice. I need her to admit it herself. I need recordings. I need proof. I need something strong enough to destroy her. Zeke nodded. That's going to take some creative work. But I think we can do it. Michael left Portland with a plan for revenge in mind. Emma thought she was smart, thought she covered her tracks. But she made a fatal mistake. She underestimated how far a betrayed father would go to seek justice. Over the next few days, Michael begins to implement the first phase of his plan, psychological warfare. He begins leaving subtle clues around the house. News articles about missing children were placed where Emma would see them. Television programs about human trafficking are shown when she comes home. Newspaper articles about the FBI investigation accidentally land on the kitchen table. At first, Emma doesn't seem to notice. But Michael watches her, looking for any sign of nervousness or fear. He understands the human psyche and knows how to apply pressure without being noticed. Slowly, he begins to see a change. Emma begins to ask strange questions. Why do you keep watching the scary news? She would ask. Why are you so interested in missing children? Michael would shrug and say it was just happenstance. But he continued to apply pressure, continued to sow the seeds of fear. After 2 weeks, he noticed that Emma began to change her habits. Her phone conversations became more private and whispered. She began checking the locks on her doors and checking the windows multiple times. She began to show signs of paranoia. Michael knows she's starting to feel the pressure. It was time to up the ante. He creates a fake FBI notice of investigation using techniques he learned from Zeke. The document looked completely official, claiming that the FBI was reinvestigating all missing child cases from 5 years ago, using new techniques and evidence. He left the document in his mailbox, making sure Emma would be the first to see it. That night, Emma's behavior is completely different. She's nervous, agitated, and constantly checking her phone. She walked around the house like a trapped animal. What happened? Michael asked, keeping his voice concerned but not arousing suspicion. Nothing, Emma replied quickly. Just work stress. But Michael saw the truth. She was scared. Later that night, he heard her talking on the phone in a low voice, her voice tense and urgent. Though he couldn't hear the words, the tone told him everything. She was panicking. Now it was time to set the trap. Revenge is an art that requires patience, precision, and a deep understanding of human weakness. Michael spent the next few weeks perfecting his craft, like a painter creating his masterpiece. Every stroke had a purpose, every color chosen just right to create maximum effect. Michael's first step was to understand the enemy. He began to systematically study Emma's life as he had once studied enemy targets. He tracked her every move, recorded her every habit, and mapped her social networks. Emma's life is a carefully constructed lie. She attends charity events, not because she cares, but because it gives her access to wealthy and influential people. Her friends are tools, used to maintain her image and gain information. Her entire existence is a performance, a role carefully choreographed to hide her true nature. Michael sets out to break the edge of this performance. He contacted a psychologist named Dr. Evelyn Lawrence, a psychologist who specializes in helping survivors of human trafficking. Dr. Lawrence immediately agreed to meet, and when she heard Sophia's story, her eyes burned with anger. "I've seen people like your wife," Dr. Lawrence told Michael. "They are perfect sociopaths, able to mimic normal emotional responses, but completely empty inside. They see other people, even their own children, as objects to be manipulated and exploited." "I want to destroy her," Michael said frankly. "Then we need to do more than simply expose her," Dr. Lawrence replied. "We need to create a narrative that she can't escape. We need to make her story a national scandal." The women began to formulate a plan. First, Sophia would write her story, detailing her experiences but remaining anonymous. They would post it on Stolen Voices, a blog that specializes in human trafficking survivor stories. As the stories begin to gain traction, Dr. Lawrence explains, the stories will be published on Stolen Voices, a blog dedicated to survivors of human trafficking. As the story begins to gain traction, Dr. Lawrence explains, we will gradually reveal more details. We'll let the media and the public build their investment in the story, and then we'll reveal that it happened here, in Willow Glen, to a local girl. Meanwhile, Michael and Zeke continue to gather technical evidence. Zeke successfully hacked into Emma's email account, uncovering communications with Julian Rusk and other suspicious contacts. The emails are full of code words and implied references, but the pattern is clear. Emma didn't just sell Sophia once. She maintained an ongoing relationship with the trafficking network. "She's still doing this," Zeke told Michael, pointing to the most recent email exchange. "Look at these dates, these citations. She's also providing them with information to help them identify other potential targets." Michael felt something beyond personal anger. Emma hadn't just destroyed his family. She was actively hurting other families. It was time to put an end to this. Michael decides to use the most dangerous but effective tactic of all, direct confrontation. He'll make Emma self-destruct under pressure, record her admissions, and then use the recordings as undeniable evidence. In order to do this, he needs Zeke to install listening devices in Emma's car. It's military-grade technology, small enough to be undetectable but powerful enough to record conversations clearly. "It's dangerous," Zeke warns. "If she finds the device, she'll know she's being watched." "She won't find out," Michael said. "She's too cocky, thinks she's too smart. That will be her downfall." Zeke installed the device while Emma attended her Tuesday yoga class. The operation took less than 5 minutes, and the device was completely invisible. Now Michael needs to create a situation that will force Emma to contact her accomplice. He decides to use fear, every criminal's greatest weakness. Michael crafted a message, written with a plain pen and paper purchased from a convenience store, wearing gloves to avoid fingerprints. "Emma, we know what you did to Sophia. She's alive, and she remembers everything. You have 48 hours to surrender voluntarily, or we'll turn over the evidence to the FBI. It's your only chance." Simple, direct, threatening. Just enough to make her panic, but not enough to make her think rationally. Michael put the note under her windshield wiper when she returned from yoga class. Then he drove a few blocks away and waited. His phone rang 20 minutes later. "She found the note," Zeke reported. She was going nuts. "It's dialing, and the sound quality is perfectly clear. Recording every word. Listen to this." Zeke put the phone on speakerphone. Emma's voice came through the speaker, full of panic and desperation. "Julian, it's me. We're in big trouble. Someone knows about the girl." The man's voice responded, calm and controlled. "What girl? Be careful what you say on the phone. You know what I'm talking about. Sophia, my daughter. Someone left me a note saying she's alive, that she remembers everything." There was silence for a moment. Then Julian's voice, more guarded. "That can't be. You said she was disposed of." "I said she was moved. I didn't ask for details. I just wanted her out of my life, and you arranged this." "Lower your voice. Where are you?" "In my car." "Julian, if this is exposed, we're all screwed. The press, the FBI, everyone will know. I need to know what happened to her." She was moved into the network. Multiple transfers, multiple locations. Tracking is nearly impossible. But what if she escaped? What if she comes back? Michael listened, feeling a cold satisfaction. Emma was digging her own grave. every word another nail. If she came back, she would have done it years ago, Julian said. It's someone trying to scare you. Maybe it's an ex-husband. Maybe it's some reporter who found an old record. Ignore it. I can't ignore it. Emma's voice became more hysterical. You don't understand what I paid for. I sold my own daughter. I live in fear every day that someone will find out. What you did was necessary. The girl became too curious, too difficult to control. She threatened to expose the whole operation. I know. That's why I contacted you. But now it looks like my decision is going to come back to haunt me. You got what you wanted? Julian's voice grew colder. $150,000 plus subsequent payments. You were able to maintain your lifestyle and get rid of a problem child. It was a business deal, Emma. Don't let emotion cloud judgment. A business deal? Emma's voice cracked. I sold my daughter to a sex trafficker. That's not commerce. It's monster behavior. And then you're the monster, Julian said coldly. But you're a rich monster, thanks to me. If you can't handle the consequences, that's your problem. Subsequent payments? Emma's voice became smaller, more frightened. You said subsequent payments. Why is there a follow-up payment? Because the girl proved valuable. She's young, attractive, well-educated. She made a lot of money for us. We share the profits, remember? Michael felt nausea rise to his throat. Emma hadn't just sold Sophia once. She was profiting from her daughter's ongoing exploitation. I don't want the details, Emma said. I just want the money. Then you got what you wanted. But there are people investigating now, and you need to be careful. If this leads to us, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind you don't want to know about. Stay calm, say nothing, and this will pass. The call ended. Michael sat in his car, his hands trembling with anger and disgust. The recording was better than any evidence he could have hoped for. Emma had admitted everything in her own voice. The sale of Sophia, the ongoing relationship with the trafficking network, and even the financial benefits from the ongoing exploitation of her daughter. But that's still just the beginning. Michael wants total destruction. He wants Emma to lose not just her freedom, but her reputation, her social standing, everything she holds dear. He calls Zeke. Did you get everything? Every word. Digital recordings, multiple backup copies. This will definitely hold up in court. Good. Now let's move on to phase 2. Over the next few days, Michael implemented the media portion of his plan. Sophia's story was posted on the Stolen Voices blog, an anonymous but heartbreaking survival and recovery account. The story quickly went viral. Social media users began sharing it, moved by its emotional power and courage. Local news stations began to cover the blog post, discussing the broader issue of human trafficking in Oregon. Michael observes Emma's reaction to the growing media attention. At first, she doesn't seem to realize that the story concerns her. But when the reporter starts asking about local trafficking cases at Willow Glen, she begins to show signs of panic. Did you see that story? She asked Michael one night, trying to keep her voice steady. About the girl who claimed to have been sold by her mother? I saw it. Michael replied calmly, studying her expression for signs of fear. Shocking story. You don't think anyone would think it had anything to do with Sophia, do you? I mean, that's crazy. Michael shrugged like the idea had never happened to him. I'm sure no one would think that. After all, what kind of mother sells her own child? Emma's face turned pale, but she managed to keep her composure. Over the next few days, the pressure continued to build. More reporters showed up at Willow Glen, asking about missing children and local trafficking connections. Emma's friends began asking uncomfortable questions. Neighbors begin to look at her in strange ways. Michael watches as Emma's perfectly constructed social image begins to crumble. She begins to lose sleep and weight. Her perfect appearance began to show signs of stress. Then, 3 weeks after the story was published, the truth was revealed. In a live television interview, Dr. Evelyn Lawrence declared that the truth is out there. Evelyn Lawrence announced that the author of the Stolen Voices story was Sophia Hartwell, a local girl from Willow Glen. She provided documents, photographs, and medical records as proof. Emma's world began to fall apart at that moment. The full story was shown on the local news that night. Emma and Michael sit together in their living room and watch as the reporter details the allegations that a local mother sold her 15-year-old daughter to an international trafficking network. Michael watches Emma's reaction. Her face turns whiter and whiter. Her hands begin to shake. Her perfect composure eventually begins to crack. "This can't be true," she whispers repeatedly. "This can't be true." But in her eyes, Michael saw fear and despair. She knew the game was over. The next few days were a media circus. Reporters besieged their house. Emma's picture appeared on the national news as Monster Mother of the Year. Her friends abandoned her. The charitable organization she worked for demanded her immediate resignation. Michael watched it all unfold with a deep sense of satisfaction. This is what justice looks like, not just legal consequences, but total rejection by society. But he wasn't done yet. The final blow came a week later, when an FBI agent appeared on their doorstep. Michael watches from an upstairs window as Emma is handcuffed and taken away. Reporters documented every moment, flashbulbs flashing like falling thunder. Emma glances back at the house before being wheeled into the FBI vehicle. Her eyes met Michael's, and in that moment, she fully understood. She knew he had planned it all. She knew he had destroyed her. The look on her face wasn't one of remorse or shame. It was one of pure hatred. But that didn't matter now. She could never hurt anyone again. The trial was a national sensation. The media covered every detail, every testimony, every piece of evidence. Sophia bravely testified, detailing her experience. Her testimony was heartbreaking and powerful, and several jurors wept as they listened to her describe the horrors she endured. Michael testified about the recordings, about Emma's confessions, about her financial ties to the trafficking network. Several jurors look physically ill as the recordings are played in the courtroom. Emma's lawyers try various defense strategies. They claimed she was coerced, that she was a victim, that she suffered from mental illness. But the evidence was too overwhelming. The recordings were too clear. It only took the jury 3 hours to declare guilt. On all counts, Emma was sentenced to 52 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole. She would die there. But for Michael, the real victory wasn't incarceration. The real victory is that Emma has lost everything she once held dear. Her social status gone. Once a respected lady in her community, her name is now synonymous with evil. Her money, confiscated to pay compensation and legal fees. Her once lavish lifestyle is now a memory of a prison cell. Her reputation utterly destroyed. Her story was made into a documentary, written into books, and became a case study in the depths of moral depravity that mankind is capable of. Her freedom gone. She would spend the remainder of her life in a small cell, being reminded daily of all she had lost. Michael sold their house and liquidated all of Emma's possessions. The money went to organizations that help victims of human trafficking. Emma was left with nothing in prison, except years to reflect on her crimes. Sophia chose to adopt the last name Kip in honor of the woman who helped her escape. She began studying art therapy at Portland State University, creating work that helped other trauma survivors heal. Michael moved to a smaller house just minutes away from Sophia's college. He built a greenhouse in the backyard where they could work together, planting new life and nurturing new hope. One spring morning a year later, Michael stood in the greenhouse and watched Sophia paint in front of her easel. She was working on a series she called Phoenix, Images of Rebirth from Destruction. She is no longer the broken girl who was taken away. She has become a powerful young woman dedicated to helping others heal from trauma. "What do you think she thinks about?" Sophia asked, not looking up from her painting. Being in prison. Michael considered the question. He thought about Emma often, imagining her in a cell, facing the consequences of her actions. "I think she thinks about everything she's lost," he says. "The life she once had, the choices she can never get back. I think she wakes up every day remembering how her world fell apart." "Do you think she regrets it?" Michael shook his head. "No, she doesn't regret hurting you. She only regrets being caught. That's the nature of people like her. They never regret the pain they cause, only the consequences they face." Sophia nods and continues to draw. Her drawing shows a phoenix rising from the flames, powerful and beautiful. "I'm glad," she says. "I'm glad she's in prison, and I'm glad she lost everything. This may sound bad, but it feels like justice." "It's not bad," Michael said. "It's human nature. The way she hurt you, anyone would want her to suffer." They work in comfortable silence, father and daughter, survivor and protector. Sunlight streamed through the glass of the greenhouse, nourishing the new life they planted. This is the ultimate form of vengeance, not just punishing evil, but creating something good from what has been destroyed. Emma may have taken Sophia's childhood, but she can't take her future. The greenhouse Michael built is full of life and light, and it stands where Emma once walked, plotted her lies, and counted her blood money. Now that space nurtures growth and healing, a living testament to the triumph of hope over despair. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.